Hello, everybody. My name is Max, and welcome to the part 3 of the listening course. In this part, we're going to learn everything about part 3. We're going to see how we can answer part 3. What is part 3? What are the tricks? What are the tips for this part? And how we can find the traps, how we can find the answers in this part. This part is a little bit tricky because if you answer one question wrong, that might lead to the others. So you have to be very careful how to answer the questions, how to listen the first time, how to listen for the second time. And don't worry, I'm going to teach you all of it. With all these tips and tricks, you can definitely get a very good score in part 3 as well. So let's get started. All right, in part 3, we're going to have 5 short related monologues. And there are 5 different speakers that they're talking about some kind of topic, for example, about weather, about, for example, emergency, about, for example, sport, vacation, something. It's a related topic. And what you have to do in this part is that you have to understand the gist. Gist means the general idea that they're talking. This is very important. It's the part that not only will you test it on gist, but also you will test it on detailed information. So you have to be very careful of understanding the general information as well as detailed information as well here. So you have to understand opinion, attitude, function, purpose, relationship, topic, place, situation, agreement. All this information you have to understand in this part. What you have to do at the beginning is that you have to start by reading the instructions to get the idea of the topic. You have to understand the topic by reading the instructions. It will tell you what the topic is about. And after that, you are going to read all those monologues and also all those options that you have. Now, there's going to be 8 options in this part, which usually they don't have, let's say they don't follow an order. So it's randomly set there, and you have to just find them throughout the audio files that you're listening to. Let me show you an example so that you understand a little bit better. So this is going to be 5 speakers, as you can see here, and there's going to be 8 monologues, as you can see here, or 8, let's say, not monologues, 8 different sentences related to each monologue that you're going to listen. Now, one thing you got to be very careful is that each speaker is going to talk about only one option. So he's not going to talk about all of the options. The speaker 1 is going to talk about one option. And always he's going to also mention 2 other options as a trap. So you will always listen to speaker 1, which, for example, he's generally talking about B, but as a distraction, he might talk about D and F as well, which D and F will not be the answer, and only B is the correct answer. Just like the other parts that we talked about, the distraction in this part is like this. Most of the time, the speakers are talking about 3 options, but only one option is the answer. So you have to be very, very careful how to listen to it. Now, one thing you got to take care, as I mentioned, there's going to be 8 different options that you have, and we have only 5 speakers. So what happens to the rest of those 3 options that we have? Definitely, you're not going to use those 3 options randomly distributed here. We don't know which answers you're not going to use. For example, you're not going to use C, for example, F and H at the end. So the answers are A, B, D, E, and G. So 3 options is extra here. You're not going to use them. Be very careful. Don't write 2 answers for speaker 1. No, there's always only one answer for each speaker, and it's not going to be more than that. All right, now let's take a look at some of the tricks that we can just learn about this part. First of all, what you have to do is quickly read the instructions and the options. What is the link between the 5 recordings? This is something you can easily find. Okay, what is the link between all the recordings? For example, they're talking about all of them sport. They're all talking about, for example, a disaster. They're all talking about something. So you can find first thing, you can understand the topic. After that, you have to study all the options and underlining the keywords in each one. When you underline the keywords, you know exactly what to focus. And if they talked about that option, that's the answer. So you don't need to read the whole option again and again each time you listen to the audio file. Remember, before you listen, when you understand the topic, try to think about kind of phrases, words that the speakers might use to talk about that specific topic. That might help you to kind of predict the answer somehow. It's not very good part to predict the answers, but it's possible to familiarize yourself with the audio file. You can somehow a little bit understand better what you are going to listen. That's a good technique you can do, and you can just predict what kind of things they might say about the topic. Now, remember, the first time you are going to listen to the audio file, you're not going to just listen for the details. The first time is for general understanding. You have to listen for the general idea of what each speaker say. So in this situation, you should try to, based on the general idea, answer the question based on generally what they are saying. The second time that you're listening, you have to check for each of your choices that exactly matches what the speaker says. So this is really important. The second time is for details. The first one, you just listen for general ideas, because the first time you just have to understand the topic. Okay, let me understand what this person is basically talking about. And in that case, you can find the general ideas. And remember, as I mentioned, always he's going to talk about 3 of those options, and only one of it is the answer. Sometimes he might talk about 2 options. It's not a rule that he's always talking about 3, but he might talk about 3. So keep in mind that you are going to also get distracted with other options, and 2 of those options always wrong. One of it is correct, and it's kind of obvious after you practice a couple of times. You can kind of find out which 2 options are not correct and which option is correct based on the general idea and a specific information. So if you listen generally to the audio file, you can understand which options are basically wrong, because the general idea will give you the meaning of the whole audio file. You understand, okay, this audio file is talking about being late somewhere. This is the general. Now, what is specific situation is he talking about? You listen the second time and you get that specific understanding, and you can find the answer easily in that case. Remember, before you answer a question, wait until you have heard everything the speaker has to say. Don't answer too fast. You listen to, for example, half of the audio file and say, okay, now I know which answer is correct. No, always listen to the end, because he might say something at the end that changes the whole rule and whole answer. So be very careful. Listen to the whole audio file before you answer. And again, this part, another trap for this part is the exact word matches. Be very careful. If you heard the exact word and you can see one of the options is exactly the same answer, that's probably not the answer. You have to listen for the similar ideas that you're hearing in the audio file and something that is the meaning of that in the answers, not the same vocabulary. And be very careful if the speaker says something connected with 2 or more options. There's only one correct answer, as I mentioned. And when you have chosen an answer, cross it out in pencil so that you can concentrate on the others. This is also very good. When you answer, just cross it out. Say, okay, this is the answer. I just answered that. There's nothing going to be more than that. And you can go to the next option and listen to the next speaker. Remember that 3 of the sentences aren't needed from A to H. As I mentioned, don't worry about the understanding every word in each recording. It is unnecessary. As I mentioned, not every vocabulary is important in this part. General, let's say, understanding of the gist and general idea sometimes is more important than specific individual words. And when you check your answers on the second listening, remember that one mistake may have led to the others. Because if you choose, for example, the answer to 1 is A, but you choose B, and B is the answer to number 2, you just lost 2 points easily. Even though whatever you do for the second option, it's always wrong, because you just answered number 2 in number 1. And now number 1 is wrong, number 2 is also wrong. So be very careful. One wrong answer might lead to the others as well. All right, now we're going to practice a little bit in this part together. We're going to see one example and find out all these traps and tricks that we mentioned in here. So what we are going to do is we're going to see why the answer for speaker 1 is C, why C is correct, and why the other options like A and G wrong. So first of all, it says you will hear 5 different people talking about unfortunate events for question 19 to 23. Choose from the list A to H what each speaker says. use the letter only once. There are 3 extra letters which you do not need to use. Okay, so we have the topic. The first thing I have to understand is this. The topic is about unfortunate events. Okay, now what options do we have? We have A, having something stolen, B, falling over, C, arriving late for work, D, being hurt in an accident, E, failing a test, F, breaking something valuable, G, missing a train, and H, losing a ticket. All right, let's see what it says. It says, I keep looking at my watch and I realized I wasn't going to make it. They told me that if I didn't get in time this morning, I'd have to look for another job. So this was a disaster. But it was so unfair. I'd done everything right. I'd got up at 7:30, left the house at 8, and caught the early train into town. It was just my bad luck that it broke down as soon as it left the station. I thought of calling to explain what happened, but I couldn't find my phone. And at first, I thought a thief must have taken it. Then I remember that in my hurry to go out, I'd left it on the kitchen table. All right, now here are the option. Now, generally, as you can see, he's talking, if you look at the general idea, is that he was late for something, right? And we can understand that here it says, I kept looking at my watch and I realized I wasn't going to make it. So definitely he's going to arrive late for something. For what? The next sentence, it says, if I didn't get in on time this morning, I'd have to look for another job. So we understand that he's talking about arriving late for work. And that is the correct answer. Now, he also talked about other options like G, missing a train. He said, I got up at 7:30, left the house at 8, and caught the early train into the town. So he caught the train. So G is wrong because G says missing a train, but he didn't miss it. He caught it. So G is wrong. And also A, it says, but I couldn't find my phone. And at first, I thought a thief must have taken it. A says having something is stolen. Until here, A is correct. But after that, he says, then I remembered that in my hurry to go out, I'd left it on the kitchen table. So nobody steal anything from this person. And he has his cell phone, just he forgot to bring it. So in that case, A is also wrong. And that brings us to the answer, which is C, and C is the correct answer. So you see, he talked about 2 of the options, which both of them were wrong, and one option, which at first he talked about it, is the answer. So again, listening to the whole audio file is essential. If you just listen to this part until it, probably this part, you don't listen to the last sentence, you're just going to answer A. Because you heard that he said something about stealing and said, oh, it's A, so that's the answer. But no. And as you can see, generally, all this topic that he's talking is about being late and the problems and consequences and things that happened while he was arriving late. So if you listen to the general idea, you can understand the topic first. The topic that you can hear here is about being late somewhere and all the consequences of that. And then inside of that topic, he specifically talks about train and thinking about something has been stolen, or thinking about, for example, losing his job and all this information there. It's just there, some of them to distract you and some of them leads to the answer. Now we're going to listen to the speaker number 2 this time. We're not going to take a look at the, let's say, the answer. We're going to listen to part 2 and we're going to find out why, for example, any of these answers can be wrong. So you have to check whether A, B, D, E, F, or G is correct. All right, so let's listen and check.
It seemed to me that everything had gone quite well. I was really nervous, of course, but I'd gone at about the right speed, and I hadn't made any serious mistakes, or had an accident, or anything like that, so I was fully expecting to pass this time. But when it was over and I let go of the steering wheel, I noticed the expression on the guy's face, and I just knew I'd have to take it again in a few months. So, until then, it'll be back to waiting at bus stops and on railway platforms, or asking friends to give me a lift. And on top of that, I'll have to pay for more lessons, which I really can't afford.
Let's listen one more time.
It seemed to me that everything had gone quite well. I was really nervous, of course, but I'd gone at about the right speed, and I hadn't made any serious mistakes, or had an accident, or anything like that, so I was fully expecting to pass this time. But when it was over, and I let go of the steering wheel, I noticed the expression on the guy's face, and I just knew I'd have to take it again in a few months. So, until then, it'll be back to waiting at bus stops and on railway platforms, or asking friends to give me a lift. And on top of that, I'll have to pay for more lessons, which I really can't afford.
Very good. Now, which answer do you think is correct? And which other options were wrong? Or were mentioned and they were wrong? So, let's check that together. So the correct answer is E, failing a test. Now let's see why. So the part that she said, so I was fully expecting to pass this time, but when it was over and I let go of the steering wheel, I noticed the expression on Guy's face, and I just knew I'd had to take it again. So this is all referring to failing a test. And then he says, or she said at the end, and on top of that, I'll have to pay for more lessons, which I really can't afford. So when you fail a test, you have to pay again for it, right? But again, there are some distractions here, which we're going to take a look. We're going to listen one more time. This time, what I want you to do is find out which two other options were mentioned here, and those options were distractions.
It seemed to me that everything had gone quite well. I was really nervous, of course, but I'd gone at about the right speed, and I hadn't made any serious mistakes, or had an accident, or anything like that, so I was fully expecting to pass this time. But when it was over, and I let go of the steering wheel, I noticed the expression on the guy's face, and I just knew I'd have to take it again in a few months. So, until then, it'll be back to waiting at bus stops and on railway platforms, or asking friends to give me a lift. And on top of that, I'll have to pay for more lessons, which I really can't afford.
Okay. Now, which two other options do you think he also or she also mentioned? And they were both wrong. So here are the options. The first option, which was mentioned here and it's wrong, is D, being hurt in an accident. She said, I hadn't made any serious mistake or had an accident. You see, same vocabulary, accident, accident. There was no accident and no suggestion that the speaker was hurt. So for that reason, D is 100% wrong, because she didn't talk about any kind of accident here that she had. She just said, I hadn't made any serious mistake or had an accident. So definitely D is wrong. Also, the option waiting a train. She said something about that as well. She said, so until then, it'll be back to waiting at bus stops and on railway platforms. So waiting for a train or something. Now, is this about the topic? Is the topic is referred to this? No. First of all, this is referring to the future and not to the past event, okay? Second of all, there is no suggestion of missing a train. So it's just waiting, not missing. So definitely that's not also correct. And definitely the topic was completely related to failing a test and doing it again. So this, you see, if you listen to the general idea, you can somehow understand the whole topic what she's talking generally, and you can find out those other options which were also mentioned in the audio file, and they were not really important parts of that audio file because they're not, you cannot put them in the general idea of the whole topic. They were just mentioned very short, just mention it at the end or 1 second in the middle, and it's not really important to the task, just there to distract you, just like this part. That one sentence was a distraction. So it says, so until then, I'll be back to waiting at bus stops on railways. This is just one sentence that doesn't have any sense or any important information related to the whole topic. All right, now in the next video, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at a full test, just like the other parts that we did. We're going to take a look at all 5 speakers at the same time. We're going to take a look at the options. We're going to analyze everything. And then one by one, we're going to see why the answer, for example, is A, B, C, or whatever. And we're going to find out other options as well so that you don't fall into the trap of other mistakes and learn how to do this part perfectly. All right, so thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.